My father kicked me out for following my dream. Now he lost his house and doesn't know I'm his new landlord. What I did next broke them. I'm 29 years old. I run my own tech company, and 3 weeks ago I did something that probably makes me either the worst person in the world or the most justified, depending on who you ask. I bought my parents' house without them knowing it was me, and then I tripled their rent. Yeah, I know how that sounds. But let me tell you the whole story, because what they did to me 7 years ago basically left me on the street with nothing, and everything I achieved after that was in spite of them, not thanks to them. I guess I should start from the beginning. I grew up in a middle-class family, nothing special. My dad, David, worked in real estate and did pretty well. My mom, Helen, was an accountant, and I was an only child, which means all their expectations, all their dreams, all that pressure was placed on me. For as long as I can remember, my dad talked to me about business, about properties, about investments, and I nodded and said yes to everything because it was easier than arguing. In middle school, he had already enrolled me in entrepreneurship clubs I wasn't interested in at all. In high school, I took economics and finance classes when what I really wanted was to code. I spent nights learning Python and JavaScript on my own while supposedly doing business homework, and I loved it, like I really loved it. But I never told my parents anything because I knew exactly what they'd say. I went to college to study business because that's what was expected of me. My dad had told me like 1,000 times, "You're going to study business, you're going to graduate with honors, and then you join my company or start your own. That's what successful men do." And my mom supported him in everything, always with that condescending little smile like saying, "Oh, honey, we know what's best for you." The first 2 years were horrible, honestly. I got good grades because I'm good at memorizing and taking tests, but every class felt like torture. Meanwhile, in my free time, I kept programming, doing small projects, learning new languages, and I realized that was what I wanted to do with my life, not sell properties or manage investment portfolios. We were in the same university cafeteria. I was working on my laptop on a programming project, and she came over and asked me what I was doing because it looked interesting. Turns out she was studying graphic design and we had this instant connection, you know? She was the first person who didn't look at me weird when I told her about algorithms or data structures. We started dating like 2 weeks after meeting, and she was the first person I confessed to that I hated my major. I remember that day perfectly. We were at her apartment watching movies and I just let it out. "I can't do this 4 more years. It's killing me inside." And she told me, "Then change it. Change your major." Like it was that simple. But she was right. I had spent 2.5 years doing something I hated just to please my parents. And in that moment, I realized that if I didn't do something about it, I was going to end up bitter and miserable my whole life. So, I started researching the computer science program at my university, talked to academic advisors, and confirmed I could make the switch. I'd lose some credits, obviously, and would have to stay an extra year, but it would be worth it. Nicole completely supported me. My best friend Kevin also told me to do it, and for the first time in years, I felt excitement about something related to school. The problem was telling my parents. I postponed it for like 2 months, but eventually the moment came when they had to know because I needed them to sign some papers and basically needed their approval because they were paying my tuition. It was in March. I remember because it was my mom's birthday in a few days and I thought, great, I'm going to ruin her birthday with this news. I arrived at the house on a Sunday. They were in the living room, watching TV, and I told them I needed to talk to them about something important. My dad turned off the TV, and they looked at me with that expression like, "This better be good." I told them, "I've decided to change my major from business to computer science," just like that, straight to the point. There was like 5 seconds of total silence where you could only hear the kitchen clock going, tick-tock, and then my dad said, "This is a joke." And I said, "No, Dad, I'm serious. This is what I want to do. It's my passion. It's what I want to dedicate myself to." And that's when everything started going to hell. My dad got up from the couch, his face was red, and he started yelling, "Are you crazy? After all the money we've invested in you? After all the plans we've made?" My mom was sitting there with her arms crossed, saying, "We always knew you were immature, but this is ridiculous. Absolutely ridiculous." I tried to explain to them that this wasn't a phase, that I had researched, that computer science had an incredible future, that I could have a successful career, but they wouldn't let me talk. My dad kept yelling about disappointment, about waste, about how I was betraying him. My mom was saying things like, "And what are you going to do? Sit in front of a computer all day? That's not a real career, Benjamin. That's for nerds without ambition." And I was trying to stay calm, but inside I was torn apart because these were my parents, you know? They were supposed to support me, or at least listen to me. The argument lasted like an hour, in circles, them yelling and me trying to reason with them, until my dad said something I'll never forget. He said, "If you do this, if you change majors against our wishes, you're no longer our son." And I thought he was exaggerating, that it was the heat of the moment. But my mom nodded and said, "Exactly. We're not going to support someone who doesn't respect everything we've done for him." I told them, "So what? You're kicking me out?" And my dad said, "You have 24 hours to get your things out of this house. If tomorrow at this time you're still here, I'm going to throw your belongings in the street myself." I couldn't believe it. I literally couldn't process what was happening. I told them, "Are you serious? You're going to kick me out for this?" And my mom said, "You're leaving us with no options, honey." With that condescending tone I hated so much. I stood there like an idiot, not knowing what to say, and finally I just said, "Okay, I'm leaving." I went up to my room, called Nicole crying, told her everything, and she came immediately. Kevin also arrived like half an hour later because Nicole told him. The three of us started packing my things, clothes, books, my laptop, everything that could fit in suitcases and boxes. My parents didn't even come up to see me. They stayed downstairs like nothing was happening. Kevin told me I could stay at his apartment as long as I needed. He lived in a small place, like a studio, but I had a couch where I could sleep. That night we left with all my stuff. I was driving my car, a 2015 Honda Civic that technically my parents had given me for my 18th birthday but was in my name, thank God. And Nicole was with me trying to console me while I just stared at the road thinking, what the fuck just happened? Kevin was waiting for us at his apartment with pizza and beer, trying to make the situation less horrible. And I appreciated the gesture, but honestly, I wasn't hungry. I didn't feel like doing anything except disappearing. The first few days were weird. I slept on Kevin's couch, woke up in the mornings disoriented, and it took a few seconds to remember that I no longer had a home, that my parents had basically disowned me. Kevin was being amazing. Like really amazing. But I knew I couldn't stay there forever. I needed a plan. The thing was that without my parents' financial support, I couldn't pay for university, not even with student loans because I had already applied to several and they denied me for not having provable income or a co-signer. So, a week after moving in with Kevin, I made the hardest decision of my life. Up to that point, I left university. It was devastating, honestly. I had been in school for almost 3 years, and now all of that felt like a waste. But I had no choice. I needed money, I needed stability, and I needed to do it fast. I started looking for work, any work, and the truth is that without a college degree, the options were pretty limited. After like 2 weeks of sending applications everywhere, I got an interview at a restaurant called Sunnyside Diner, one of those typical American places with retro decoration and an all-day breakfast menu. The manager, Stanley, a man about 50 years old with a mustache and belly, hired me on the spot. The job was flipping burgers, preparing orders, cleaning the grill, that kind of thing. They paid $8 an hour, which wasn't much, but it was something. Working at the diner was exhausting. Shifts were 8 hours, sometimes more if someone was absent, and I'd arrive at Kevin's apartment, completely exhausted, smelling like grease and smoke. But I needed more money if I eventually wanted to get my own place. So like a month into working at the diner, I got a second job as a night security guard at an office building. The shift was from 11 at night to 7 in the morning, which meant I was sleeping like 4 hours a day between both jobs. My routine was diner from noon to 8 at night, sleep from 8:30 to 10:30, security guard from 11 to 7 in the morning, sleep from 7:30 to 11:30, and repeat. It was unsustainable, but I didn't see another option. Nicole continued to be my rock through all of this. She was still in university, had her life, but always found time for me. She'd bring me food at the diner, spend time with me in the few free moments I had, and never, not once, made me feel bad about my situation. Kevin was also incredible, never pressured me for rent or food, always told me, "Relax, bro, when you can, you'll pay me." But I felt bad anyway, like I was a parasite living on his couch. And I knew I had to do something to change my situation. I worked those 2 jobs for like 6 months. They were the 6 hardest months of my life. No exaggeration. I was constantly tired, constantly stressed, and I watched my friends continue in university living normal lives while I barely survived. My parents never tried to contact me, not a call, not a message, nothing. It was like I had stopped existing for them. Sometimes I wondered if they thought about me, if they regretted it, but then I remembered how they looked at me that day when they kicked me out, and I knew they probably didn't. Then something changed. One afternoon at the diner, I was serving a regular customer, a guy named Philip, about 40 years old, who always ordered the same thing, black coffee and a turkey sandwich. That day he saw me using my laptop during my break. I was working on a small programming project. Something simple, but that kept me sane. Philip asked me what I was doing, and we started talking. Turns out he worked at a tech startup, a small company that developed software for other companies. I told him my story. Not all of it, but I mentioned that I had studied some computer science and that I programmed as a hobby. He asked me some basic technical questions and was impressed with my answers. The next day, Philip came back to the diner and offered me an opportunity. He said his company needed help with basic technical support, that it wasn't programming yet, but that it was a foot in the door of the industry. He offered me $12 an hour, full-time, with possibility of growth. I didn't think twice. I accepted on the spot. 2 weeks later, I had my formal interview with his boss, Samantha, a woman about 35 years old, super smart and direct. The interview went well. I demonstrated I knew what I was talking about. And they hired me as an entry-level worker in the IT department. I quit the diner immediately, but kept the security guard job because I needed the extra money. The job at the startup was completely different from everything I had done before. I was finally using my brain, solving technical problems, helping clients with their systems, and although it was basic work, it was exactly where I wanted to be. Samantha quickly realized that I could do more than just technical support. She started giving me small programming projects, things that other programmers didn't have time to do, and I completed them quickly and well. Like 4 months into the company, they promoted me to a full-time position with better salary, about $18 an hour plus benefits. I was finally able to quit the security guard job and start sleeping like a normal person. I was also finally able to give Kevin some money for all those months. He let me stay for free, although he insisted it wasn't necessary. Nicole was super proud of me, and honestly, I was proud of myself too. I had managed to get into the industry without a college degree, without help from anyone except the people who really mattered to me. The next 2 years were intense. I dedicated myself completely to learning everything I could, took online courses in my free time, studied the projects of senior programmers, asked questions, and basically became a sponge absorbing knowledge. Samantha became my mentor. She taught me not just about programming, but about the business of technology, about how to talk to clients, about project management. She gave me opportunities I probably didn't deserve yet, and I made sure not to let her down. There was one particular project that changed everything. An important client, a medium-sized company that needed to modernize their entire inventory system, and Samantha put me in charge of the project. I was like 25 years old, had been at the company for 2 years, and she was giving me this huge responsibility. I was terrified but excited. I formed a small team. We worked day and night for 3 months, and we delivered a system that exceeded all the client's expectations. The project was a total success. The client was so happy they recommended us to other companies, and Samantha publicly recognized me in the company. After that project, I started thinking big. I had experience now, I had connections, and I had ideas. During the next year, I started developing my own business concept, an IT consulting firm that would help small and medium-sized companies optimize their technology systems. I talked to Samantha about my plans, expecting maybe she'd be upset, but she was incredible about it. She told me, "It's your time. Go and do it, and you'll always have my support." So, at 27 years old, almost 5 years after my parents kicked me out, I launched my own company. The first few months were difficult. I worked from the apartment I now shared with Nicole. We had moved in together like a year before, and she completely supported me while I built the business. I got my first clients through the connections I had made at the startup, small companies that needed help but couldn't afford the prices of the big consulting firms. I offered quality services at reasonable prices, and little by little I started building a reputation. I hired my first employee like 6 months later, then another, and by the end of the first year I had a team of 5 people. The business grew faster than I expected. In the second year, we already had contracts with larger companies, we had tripled our income, and I was making more money than I had ever imagined. I didn't become a millionaire overnight or anything that dramatic, but I was comfortable, very comfortable. I was able to move with Nicole to a better apartment, buy myself a new car, and for the first time in years, I didn't have to worry about money. Kevin also worked for me now. I offered him a position as soon as I could afford it, because I never forgot what he did for me. During all this time, my parents never tried to contact me. Not on my birthday, not on Christmas, nothing. It was like they had really erased me from their lives. At first it hurt, I'm not going to lie, but over time the pain turned into something more like indifference. I was building my own life, my own chosen family with Nicole, Kevin, and the people who really supported me. I didn't need them, and honestly, I didn't even think about them most of the time. But then, like 3 months ago, I was browsing the internet looking for properties because Nicole and I were thinking about buying our first house, and I came across an ad that made my heart stop. It was my parents' house. I recognized it immediately. Same facade, same front yard, same address. They were selling the house. Or rather, they were renting it, because I had misread initially. The ad said they were looking to rent, not sell. The description mentioned that the current owners could no longer maintain the mortgage payments and needed to rent the property while they moved to something smaller. I don't know what happened to me in that moment. Something in my brain clicked, and suddenly I had this idea that was probably horrible, but that I couldn't get out of my head. I called the real estate agent handling the property, a guy who had no idea who I was or my relationship with the owners. I asked him all the details, the monthly rent they were asking for, the conditions of the contract, everything. Then I made him an offer he couldn't refuse. I told him I would buy the property completely, cash payment, no need for inspections or contingencies, but with one condition: the current owners could stay as renters under a new contract. The process took like 6 weeks. I used an LLC I had created for investments, so my name didn't appear on any document my parents could see. The agent handled everything. My parents signed the rental agreement, believing they were dealing with some anonymous investment company, and just like that, I became their landlord. During those weeks, I couldn't stop thinking about what I was doing, about whether it was justified revenge or if I had become the same kind of person as them. Nicole told me to think it through, that this could backfire on me emotionally, but I had already made the decision. Last week was when I executed the last part of my plan. I sent them an official notice of rent increase, tripling the price from what they were currently paying. It was legal. I had reviewed all the local laws with a lawyer, and technically I could do it. Along with the notice, I included a personal letter, this time with my name, explaining exactly who their new landlord was. You can imagine the shock. My dad called me 2 hours after receiving the letter. His voice sounded different, older, more tired. He said, "Benjamin, what does this mean? Is this a joke?" And I told him, "No, Dad, it's not a joke. I bought your house. I'm now your landlord, and the new rent price is what the document says." He started stammering something about how this was cruel. How could I do this to them? And I simply said, "Do you remember when you gave me 24 hours to leave your house? Well, now you have 30 days to decide if you can pay the new rent or if you need to look for another place." And I hung up. My mom tried to call me afterwards, left like 5 voicemails that I didn't listen to completely. Something about how it had been a mistake, that they were going through a difficult time, that I was their son and should have compassion. But the truth is, I don't feel much compassion. I feel something. I don't know exactly what, but it's not compassion. Maybe it's satisfaction, Maybe it's vindication, or maybe it's just sadness about everything that could have been different. Right now, my parents have to decide what to do. They can try to pay the new rent, although I know, from the financial documents from the purchase process, that they probably can't afford it. They can look for another place to live, which at their age and economic situation isn't going to be easy. Or they can call me and try to fix things. Although honestly, I don't know if I want that conversation or what I would say if we had it. Nicole asked me last night what I'm going to do if they ask me for help, if I'm really going to let them lose the house. And the truth is, I don't know the answer. What I do know is that I got here without them. I built a life, a career, a future, all on my own, with the help of the people who really mattered to me. And yeah, part of me wants them to feel even a fraction of the abandonment and desperation that I felt when they threw me out. But another part of me, a part I try to ignore, feels empty with all of this. Like I won something but also lost something in the process, and I'm not sure if it was worth it. Kevin told me a few days ago that I should let them stay with the original rent. That I already proved my point, and that being cruel is only going to hurt me. Nicole agrees with him, but says it's my decision, and that she's going to support me no matter what. And here I am, owner of the house where I grew up, with the power to do to my parents what they did to me, and feeling strangely lost about what to do with that power. I guess in a few days I'll have to decide when the notice deadline is up and they have to respond officially. And honestly, I still don't know what I'm going to do.